Welcome to Learn to Crochet with MyntKat. Today is the first lesson and I'll be talking about yarn and hooks just to give you some basic information on what you need to get started. So when it comes to picking yarn, you might be attracted to something like this fuzzy yarn. I would not recommend to start with something like this. It can make really nice products when you use it, but the stitches are really hard to see with this kind of yarn. So when you're just starting out, you want to stay away from something like this. The same goes for eyelash yarns. They are really nice and can give you very nice crochet work, but once you start crocheting with this, it just all ends up looking fuzzy, like a big ball of fuzz, and you can't distinguish any of the stitches. So this would be really hard to work with as a beginner. The same goes for this kind of yarn, which really just has a very slight texture, so it doesn't look too bad on the skein, and it's not that hard to crochet with once you know the basics. But if you're just starting out, this again will be a nightmare to find your stitches. So I recommend you stay away from any of these kind of novelty yarns and just stick with something very simple and straight like this. Also pick a lighter color. Don't start with black or brown or something really dark, because again, stitches don't show up very well. You don't want to use white either, but something light, like this light purple or light green or blue, whatever. That works much better for finding your stitches. So when it comes to picking out your yarn, as a beginner, I would recommend you start with a medium 4 size. This is the weight of the yarn, or the thickness of the yarn. It's called weight. That's the thickness. This is a worsted weight, which is a medium 4. The smaller the number, the thinner your yarn is. There's a size 0, which is lace weight. It's really thin, and you can crochet really nice lace with it, but you don't want to start out with something like that. You want to start with something thicker that's easier to work with. Like the 4 medium. I think the largest you can get is the 6, which is super bulky, and it would usually be something like this because all the fuzziness makes it bulkier. So don't use this kind of yarn. Stay away from that for now. Start with a number 4, which is worsted weight, or if you can't get worsted weight in the country you're in, start with a DK. It's size 3. It's a little bit thinner, but it's still really easy to work with. These symbols down here show you how to care for your yarn, whether you can wash it, whether you can iron it, and so on. We don't really want to worry about that too much because this is not really about how to care for your yarn, but how to crochet. So what's important for us is this one. This one shows the knitting gauge, but we don't want to knit, we want to crochet. So this, it has a little crochet hook on it. This is the one we want to look at. It recommends the hook size. This shows 4.5 millimeters. 7 US. That is the size it recommends. That would be this hook. This is a 4.5 millimeter. You don't have to use the recommended hook. This just shows you a gauge, so you know approximately how big your crochet work will be. The way to read this is at the bottom it says 17 SC. SC stands for single crochet, which is a type of stitch. 19R stands for 19 rows. So if you crochet a piece that is 17 single crochet stitches wide and 19 rows high, you get a piece that's approximately 10 by 10 centimeters or 4 by 4 inches. So this is the gauge recommended for this yarn with this hook. Most crochet patterns come with their own gauge, which is similar to this. Sometimes they have this little logo, sometimes they just have it written out in text. Basically, they tell you what size of hook to use, how many stitches to use, how many rows to do, and you work up this piece and measure if you get the same measurements. If your piece is larger, you will have to switch to a smaller hook. If your piece is smaller, you will have to switch to a larger hook. The gauge is just there to tell you whether a garment, if you want to make a shirt, a sweater, socks, a hat, if those will work out to the correct size. That's what gauge is important for. So it's not really important for us right now, but this is something you will need to know. So once you've picked out your yarn, I'm going to be using this, you need to pick out a hook. If you just start out, I recommend to just get a cheap hook from the store, or maybe find a friend who can lend you one. There are many different kinds of hooks and different sizes. For learning to crochet, it's not really important what size or type of hook you start with. The difference in using different hooks is, like I said, the size of your piece, which means the little holes between the stitches. This is worked from this yarn, obviously. This is worked with a number 3 hook. It is 10 stitches by 5 rows. I worked the same piece with a number 4 hook. You can already see the difference. Same amount of stitches, same amount of rows, number 3 hook, number 4 hook. And I also worked the same one with a 10mm hook. Again, same amount of stitches and rows. You can see it is much bigger than the other two, and it has much bigger holes because the number 10 hook or 10mm hook is just really, really large. The difference between these pieces is also the larger the hook, the softer and stretchier your work piece will get. If you use a really small one like the number 3, which is this one, tiny little hook, it won't be very stretchy, and the holes in between are really, really small. So for learning to crochet, it's not that important what size you use. I would recommend to use not something really tiny though. Use at least a number 4, maybe a 5, 4.5, 5.5, something around that direction, because these are easy to work with. This is my favorite hook. It's a Clover comfort hook. It has this comfortable grip. It's a G, that's the US size, 4mm. So this is a good size to start with, or you can go up to a I, 5.5mm. Something around these sizes would be nice to start with. So just get any old hook that you can work with just to get you started. Okay, so once you've picked out your yarn and your hook, you can get started with crocheting. There are different ways to hold your hook. This is pretty personal for most crocheters. The 2 main ways that I've seen is pen style, like this, just like a pen, and knife style, which is in your palm, like a knife, like you're cutting a steak or something. I like to crochet knife style. I find it more comfortable and easier on my wrist. For you, you will have to decide, maybe try both ways, see which one fits you best. The same thing goes for holding your yarn. When you hold your working yarn, you will want to have it in the hand that you don't hold the crochet hook in, and you want to wrap it around your fingers one way or another. I like to hold my yarn by wrapping it around my pinky, running it over my middle finger, and then holding my crochet work with my pointer and thumb. This way the yarn runs higher than the other fingers, and I can just let it run through my hand easily with not too much tension. I have seen people just wrap it around their pointer finger and hold their crochet work with their thumb and middle finger. I have seen people just hold the yarn like this and run it over their pointer while holding their crochet work. So there are lots of different ways. Basically, when you start to crochet, you will find out which way works best for you. Just try to hold the yarn in your hand so you can have a little bit of tension on it. Not too much, but also not too little. This will probably just work out naturally while you learn to crochet, so don't worry about it too much for now. Alright, I hope I could give you a good idea of what you need to get started with crochet. Just get your yarn, something light colored, worsted weight, or DK, something straight, no novelty yarn. Get a hook that's somewhere around the 4.5mm range. A little smaller, a little larger, doesn't matter. Just something to start out with. Any old hook will do. You can always get nicer, fancier hooks once you actually started crocheting and know that you like it. And get your materials ready, and in our next video we will actually start with some basic stitches. Thanks for joining me.